Maybe um, in your communication with people, it's necessary to realize when, not just realize, but be able to demonstrate how what a person is saying is not real or not true. Um, and this is not taught in schools. It's not taught in schools because these are very dangerous skills to have, because once you have these skills, um, you're able to recognize all the contradictions. Um, the skills are called fallacies. There's basically about 360 basic fallacies. These are 360 basic logical thinking mistakes that exist. Um, so what is a fallacy? I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, take a minute, and then I'll give you some examples. And maybe you will see how those examples relate to your experiences. Yeah. So let's take a look. I'll put some information in the chat as well. Definition of a fallacy. A fallacy is a misconception resulting from a flaw or mistake in reasoning. It's basically a trick or illusion that is used to influence people's thoughts. Um, and it is successful in conversation because it obfuscates or hides the truth and the facts. It presents unreal information as real information. And there are two types of fallacies. I don't really define a difference between these two, but if we are looking at the educational definitions and information, we should start in the right place. There's formal and informal fallacy. A formal fallacy is defined as an error that can be seen within the structure of an argument. Every formal fallacy is a non sequitur. It does not follow. There is no A, B, C, D logic. It does not follow. There is no logical progression. It's an argument where the conclusion has no relationship to the idea or the principles presented. And the opposite of formal is, of course, informal. And an informal fallacy or false statement is an argument where the conclusion is not supported by the ideas. This creates an unpersuasive argument with an unsatisfying conclusion. Okay, so that's the standard dictionary presented information, which is a bit boring. But let's take an example. Now there's 360 of these, so there's a lot. So obviously some are more popular and some are less popular. Some are more common and some are less common. The most common fallacy or mistake that exists is called straw man fallacy. Straw man fallacy. This is the fallacy where we are told an argument is wrong, or we are told. Let me get this right. We are told that somebody said something. He said or she said, but we were not there. If we are not there to verify the truth, if there's no audio or video evidence, we cannot know what the truth is. So he said or she said is a fallacy. It's not actually any evidence. And so when someone says to you, well, he said this or she said that, maybe they are giving you the information as their honest opinion of the truth, but it absolutely has no reference to the truth at all. When someone says he said or she said, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We can never know unless we're actually there or there's some kind of evidence that is presented. And this is very often used to create negative images of other people. Well, he said that you were bad at this, making you have a negative thought about him because you're told that he had a negative thought about you, but you weren't there. Maybe he was making a very accurate, observant, critical judgment. You have to explore the truth first. You have to get the information from the horse's mouth. Um, how do you do that? Step one, ask somebody a question that you already know the answer to. Did you go and see this person? Or can I ask you, did you go and see this person? Yes or no? If they'll say, why is it important? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it's just a yes or no question. Let's answer this before we take the next step. One question at a time, otherwise we'll get really confused here. So, it's a yes or no question. So I'm assuming that yes because of your answer, or you can tell me yes, whatever. Right. Um, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Because you have to get the person to talk about the situation. You can only incriminate a person upon you can only incriminate a person on the evidence that they themselves give. So, for example, you can only ever talk to me about what I've said, and I can only ever talk to you about what you've said. I can't ever talk to you about what somebody else has said about you because that has absolutely no relevance and might be completely untrue. So I can't include that. That's just hearsay, gossip, rumors, attempt to influence, distraction, whatever. Um, you can only talk to a person about the information which they themselves have given you. You can't talk to a person about information that other people have given you about them. It doesn't it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't provide any evidence. You have to think about it like a lawyer. So the lawyer in a court of law, the aim of the lawyer is to get specific information from a person, a witness or an accused person, and then to cross-examine to find out if that information is true or not. And we, it's just it's leading to A, conflict, and B, the opportunity for error to include information from a third party in the situation. Um, so and also it's a way out for the other person. The other person can say, well, they're lying, and there's nothing you can do. You've lost. There's nothing you can do. There's nowhere you can go with the conversation. It's finished. The conversation has to focus specifically upon the language, the details, and information given to you by the other person, um, or by the person you're communicating with. Um, so we we have to be really specific about that. And the truth is, at the end of the day, everybody will tell you everything that they're doing. They will tell you, because the human ego is such that it wants to put everything on a stage and display everything to everybody. Um, and it might be that they try to hide it, but even their contradictions will tell you the truth. And listen carefully enough. This is powerful. Listen carefully enough, and everyone will tell you everything they are going to do. Listen carefully enough. Everyone will tell you everything has a direction. Everything has a reason. Everything is going somewhere. Yeah, and that's why you sometimes get a feeling in a conversation. The feeling is, where are you going with this? You can feel that it's leading to a specific point. Everything has a direction, and people will tell you what they've done, even if it's not a good thing. They want their ego wants to um, to communicate that to everybody. It's really is part of the human condition. Um, Fallacies are a strong part of understanding correct communication. And so I gave the example of a straw man, which is the idea that anytime information is third party, you have to treat it as it doesn't, it might be false. You have to treat it as false. Um, just because that's the only way to progress forward. If you're in a court of law and you have to be 100% sure, right? If there's a small possibility that somebody did not kill somebody, you cannot convict them of the crime. You cannot convict them of the murder or manslaughter if there's a small possibility. You have to be 100% sure that the person did it, and you can only be sure with direct information. So, um, fallacies. I have there's, as I said, there's 360 of these. So it's really difficult to know where to start. And I wrote a couple of articles a few years ago about this, and I went into the topic in great depth, where I tried to give information to people about the key points. And it's so hard because it's just such a big topic. Um, um, and when you understand, when you can find one fallacy, you can find two. And when you can find two, you can find three. And when you can find three, you can find four. And when you can find it even in your own arguments, because we're all guilty of it, because none of us are perfect. Language is not perfect. So we're all going to present information that has some inaccuracy in it. But when we can be aware of our own inaccuracies, we can be much more careful. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm I'm going to give you I'm going to give you 10. I'm going to give you a top 10. This is a little bit of a random top 10, but top 10 fallacies that you can recognize in other people's speech and arguments that they use on a daily basis. Um, okay, so uh, in no particular order. So here are 10 examples. The first one is ad hominem. Ad hominem. Ad hominem is my. I'll tell you a secret. I'll tell you a little secret. I'll tell you a little secret. Ad hominem is my mother's
Mm.
favorite form of conversation. Is ad hominem. Every single conversation is ad
Mhm.
hominem. Now, I didn't know this for 30 years. For 30
Mhm.
years, I lived not knowing. And when I learned this, I was like, it was like somebody gave me like a magic stick to defeat any enemy. Because now I can say to my mother, it's not about me. It's got nothing to do with me.
Mhm.
Let's look at the facts, please. Ad hominem occurs when the author attacks the opponent and not the argument. Well, you would say that, wouldn't you? It's got nothing to do with the argument. Attacking the person. Well, you know what she's like, don't you? Da, 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 da.
Mm.
Right, right. We've all heard that. It's got nothing to do with it. It's attacking the person. Well, of course, he supports this and he goes there and he drinks this kind of beer and she drinks that kind of wine and look at the clothes they wear. Blah 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 blah. So and it's so common, and ad hominem is popular because it tries to make fun of people. Like, find any criticism you can of President Trump. It's all ad hominem. They're not
Mhm.
attacking his policies. They're attacking the character of the person. Because they can't
Mhm.
attack his policies because his policies are actually relatively good. I say relatively. They're not great, but it could be worse, right? So, ad hominem, the attack occurs when an author attacks his opponent instead of the opponent's argument. Um, um, it's what's another classic example? Oh, well, she doesn't go to church, does she? As if that's a reason to not follow the other person's reasoning. So this ad hominem is well, she's not from this school, or she spent a lot of time there, or she worked somewhere else, or it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. But it's used all the time. That's ad hominem. Attack on the person, attack on the man. Attacking the person and not the argument would be the phrase
Mhm. Okay.
that's
Okay.
used. Yeah. The second is ad populum. Ad populum attempts to prove an argument as correct simply because many people believe it to be correct. Well, most of the teachers do this. It doesn't matter what most of the people do because the majority is usually wrong.
Mhm.
There's only ever a minority of people at any point in time who understand what is happening.
Mhm.
Yeah, most of the people are wrong most of the time because they really don't. There's more you don't know than what you do know.
Okay.
Yeah, the fundamentals of philosophy. All I know is that I don't know. Build your premise without prejudice from not knowing anything. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that which is the um, football must be good because so many people are involved in the activity. But that's not an
Mm-hmm.
argument. That's not an argument at all. Um, so the idea that well, the students are happy with it, but that's not an argument. Popularity, that you can say that's that's very nice, but popularity is not an argument. It's definitely not an intellectual argument, that's for sure. And also, it probably doesn't deal with what we are talking about. So my experience of communication with people is that I always have to say, that's really nice and that's great, but let's put that over there because it's not really important to what we're discussing right here. Yeah. So uh, we try to understand that. Next, we have very similar to ad populum, but not exactly the same, is the appeal to authority. I've mentioned it
Mm-hmm.
already in our conversation today. This is the argument that it is right because there is an authoritarian group or person, could be even a famous person or a powerful person, who supports the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the president of the company likes this, so we should do it. The
Okay.
headmaster wants this, but it's not. But it's not an appeal to anything logical. It's an appeal to authority. This idea that authority equals correct is, that's like saying bicycle equals fish, right? I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. Um, so the appeal to authority is a fallacious argument where the author claims that his argument is right because somebody famous or powerful supports it. And this is what happens within culture. Somebody is built up to be famous and they have a certain opinion, and because um, who's famous in society? I don't know. Because this famous racing driver or this famous pop star likes this idea, we should follow their lead and do this. It connected with the popularity contest
So,
concept.
sorry.
I can't compete with your dog. He's far more beautiful than I am. Um, so it can be done it can be seen in science as well, where certain popular scientists support ideas. So black holes must be this way because Stephen Hawking has described it in his book. But
Mm-hmm.
all science has uh, all 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 science all scientific theories are theories. They're not realities, they're not scientific realities, they're scientific theories. And they're good until they are not good anymore. They're good until we create a better description or a better example of how things work.
Mm-hmm.
So, like molecular structure is a very nice theory, but it's only good until somebody comes and explains it in a better way. So, um, we have to be careful with appeals to authority in a religious sense as well. Well, God would be okay, yeah, I get that, but God's not here right now, so let's just focus on what it is that we need to do. So uh, here's a classic that's used in media. It's called begging the question. Begging the question. Now, what this is basically a circle where the idea and the conclusion are basically the same thing. Now here's an example. Fashion magazines don't hurt women's self-esteem because women's confidence is kept intact or boosted after reading the magazine. A equals B because B equals A. But there's no logical progression of or argument. There's nothing. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't present any evidence. It sounds very nice. It uses colorful language. It seems to make sense. And you hear this on television all the time because everything is scripted there and they just go around in circles. Um, so um, it's it's a wonderful time to be in the school because school creates this kind of environment that's great and makes people feel really good about what they're doing. Right, you get it. I haven't said anything at all, have I?
Mhm.
I haven't said anything at all
Mhm.
except just talked in a circle.
Mhm.
And this is when your director of the school stands up and talks about how wonderful the school is. It's, well, what we have to do is we have to be thankful to the staff for providing a wonderful series of lectures and lessons this year, and for the students who put their time and effort and energy into helping the staff. And it's very nice that the staff and the students were able to have this collaborative relationship where they were able to help each other on both sides of the table. Blah 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 blah. Oh
Mm.
dear. Doesn't it? It as I said, A equals B because B equals A. Um, um, um. She doesn't like him because he creates the feelings in her that make her not like him. It all sounds very nice, but it doesn't mean anything. Right. False dichotomy. Number 5. False dichotomy. This fallacy rests on the assumption that there are only two possible solutions. You can have A or B. What about C, D, E, F, G? Yeah, and marketing does this perfectly because marketing you can have A, B, or C, and choose one of these three. You get three choices, but maybe the best choice is somewhere else with something else. Um, so false dichotomy is the fallacy that there are only two possible solutions to every problem. So if we disprove one solution, if we say, well, or A is just really bad, so we have to go with B. But maybe B is not the best option either. So this idea that there are only two solutions, it ignores other alternatives. Um, um, yeah, the classic example is that um, teachers give to let's see, what would it be? Teachers, well, when you have to decide about giving A or B to a student, you're stuck in this. Well, but perhaps the student is a mixture of A and B. There are some elements of the student that are A, and there are some elements of the student that are B. But
Yeah.
I got to, I agree there are some elements A and B, but I got to put a letter here on the page. So unfortunately, this examination asks for a false dichotomy, right? It asks us to choose A or B, and I'm asked to grade you on your results on this paper. Unfortunately, I can't grade you on being a nice person. If I could grade you on being a nice person, I'd give you an A.
Mhm.
But I'm not here to grade you on being a nice person, unfortunately. So if I were to grade your argumentative skills, I'd give you an A.
Mhm.
But I'm not here to grade the argumentative skills. I'm just here to grade the piece of paper. So false dichotomies are everywhere. Politics is a false dichotomy. You vote left or vote right. Yeah. Or you can mix the two together and have something in the middle, which is like, bleh, doesn't work either. Yeah. Um, uh, Here's one more. We'll get through them all. We got 5 more to do. We'll do it quickly. Hasty generalization. This is called hasty generalization. Hasty generalization occurs when the proponent uses too small of a sample size to support their argument or generalization. Say you ask two people and you get the opinions of two people. Well, this person thinks that and that person thinks that. And then you make, well, the best thing to do is, yeah, well, that's ridiculous, right? If you survey, yeah, if you survey 67 Christian women about abortion, you will get 67 people saying that they don't agree with it, right? Right? It doesn't, yeah, right. And it's an unfair proportion of the market. It's also a hasty generalization to believe that that any statistics you have really do point in a specific direction. Real science can get closer to the truth, but you have to have these double-blind studies, and you have to do your what's that? The you have to check the placebo effect, and there's so many elements you have to be aware of. Well, and I asked my colleagues, and my colleagues say this. Yes, but they all think the same thing anyway. They like sometimes asking five people is the same as asking one person. If all five people have the same opinion, it doesn't really mean anything. Um, Only contrasts create understanding. Um, uh, People will say, "Don't go there on holiday; it's terrible." But lots of other people go there on holidays, so why should I take just one person's opinion about something? And sometimes you need time. Sometimes you need time in order to process data as well. So people want quick solutions, and you know what I do with my kids? I always buy time. I'm like, my kids want something right now. They always want something now. Right? I'm like, you have to give me 5 minutes. I'm in the middle of something, doing something. You have to give me five. And sometimes I don't need 5 minutes. Sometimes I don't actually. I need the 5 minutes, not because I can't make a decision right now, but because I know I'll make a better decision when I have the time. Because the hasty decision might be the wrong decision. You have to make a decision eventually. But okay, here we go. Here's the next one. Post hoc or false cause. This fallacy assumes that correlation equals causation. In other words, if one event predicts another event, it must have also caused the event. Now, I love this because I call this fish bicycle theory, because people eat fish and people fall off of bicycles. So you could say that people fall off of bicycles could be caused by them eating fish, because there's a link, there's a middle link, which is you've got fish, people, bicycles. There's nothing there, right? There's actually no link between any of those things. There's no causation. It's you know, 100 people from Slovakia went to Paris last summer and there were fires everywhere. It doesn't mean that 100 people from Slovakia started 100 fires. It doesn't. It's bizarre, right? Um, so people make this mistake where the they think that because X happens, Y is the result of X. But there might be some link between the two, but it doesn't mean that one causes the other. A lot of people say the bad weather caused the flooding or the high water levels. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Maybe it was the position of the moon. Maybe it was bad irrigation. Maybe it was snow melting in the mountains. Right, people have to be very careful. Uh, um, there's another example here. Football teams have better school results than baseball teams. Therefore, football makes you smarter than baseball. It doesn't really mean that, and we hear that. We hear that all the time. Excuse me, one moment. I have to check something with my kids. Okay, right. That's okay. Go back again. Here we go. We have three more. Missing the point. The premise of the argument supports a specific conclusion, but not the one the author draws. So, imagine we have a conversation. After the
Sorry.
conversation finishes, I take away from the conversation some information, and you take away from the conversation some information. It might be completely different information that we take away. It's very hard to know. And you see this if you talk to somebody again after a period of time and you refer about the original conversation, you can disagree about the content of the original conversation. Like if somebody asked you what we talked about in our last meeting, If somebody asks me what we talked about in our last meeting, you'd get different content. You get completely different content. We'd both be correct, but the content would be completely different. And so we'd have to be very careful about making any conclusions from that, because if we concluded only from your information, it would be completely different from my information. So that's why you need as much original data as possible in any situation. Uh, da, da, da.